Have you ever stepped into a room and felt the invisible pull of a man who isn't doing anything, yet everyone feels him? He doesn't speak the loudest. He doesn't wave his status around. He doesn't need to dominate or chase attention. But when he's there, the atmosphere bends around him. Men unconsciously look his way. Women soften in his presence. The air itself seems to hold him in focus. What is it that makes him different? It is not wealth. It is not physique. It is not charisma in the usual sense. It is something more primal, something rarer. It is the energy of a man who has transformed his relationship to desire. While most men are enslaved by it, he has stepped beyond it. While 90 out of 100 are bound to the impulses of their biology, he has wrestled with them, understood them, and emerged with a mind freed from possession. Carl Jung would have called this a desexualized consciousness, not in the sense of being weak or repressed, but in the sense of standing above the blind flood of instinct. The modern man who achieves this does not become less alive, he becomes more. His desire remains, perhaps more intense than ever, but he is no longer owned by it. And this is why people feel him differently. In a society that sells you lust on every billboard, in every song, in every corner of the digital world, men are pulled downward, their psychological energy drained into consumption, into hunger that never ends. Lust, detached from any higher principle, becomes the perfect tool of control. An unconscious man is easy to manipulate. He buys what he thinks will complete him. He chases what will never satisfy him. He remains predictable, reactive, exploitable. Jung saw this coming long before social media and advertising perfected it. He wrote that when archetypal energies are denied their sacred dimension, they do not vanish, they turn pathological. Desire reduced to mere animal compulsion becomes obsession. Sexuality stripped of depth becomes an endless hunger that consumes the man from within. But the one who steps outside this cycle, the man who develops a desexualized mind, becomes extraordinary. His presence alone sets him apart. He doesn't need tactics. He doesn't need masks. His very being carries a different frequency. Women sense it instantly. Not because he flatters them, not because he hides his intent, but because his gaze is clear. He looks at them without pulling, without consuming, without asking them to become something for him. Most men see women as projections of their own unconscious emptiness. Jung called this the anima projection, when a man does not meet the woman as she is, but as the screen for his fantasies, his unresolved longings, his hidden shadow. The woman feels this burden. She feels reduced, unseen, demanded upon. But when projection is withdrawn, when a man integrates his own inner feminine instead of throwing it onto others, everything changes. Suddenly, a woman feels she can breathe in his presence. She feels safe, not because he is weak, but because he is whole. She feels seen, not as an object, but as a being. And so, she opens. This is not a trick. It is not seduction. It is the natural magnetism of a differentiated mind. Look at the average man today. His eyes betray him. They drift. They linger on bodies scanning for opportunity. His words are divided between performance and hidden agenda. His energy, whether he admits it or not, carries demand. Women feel this and tighten. They guard themselves. They may smile, but they do not trust. Their bodies know what their minds cannot articulate. This man does not see me. He only sees his own hunger. Now compare this to the man who has stepped out of identification with that hunger. His attention is whole. His energy carries no need. His eyes meet theirs and remain steady. And for the first time, they feel the rarest thing of all, being recognized as they are. This is why women chase the men who do not chase them. This is why people gravitate toward the rare individual who needs nothing from them. It is not a technique. It is not a game. It is psychological liberation. Jung knew that power and love are shadows of one another. Where one dominates, the other fades. The desexualized mind does not kill desire or power, but integrates them consciously. It is no longer ruled by them in secret. But here's the tragedy. Most men will never touch this freedom. They will remain possessed. They will confuse craving for love. They will call compulsion fate. And they will never realize the chains are not outside, but inside. Jung said it plainly. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is the key. The man enslaved to lust lives in a constant state of not enough, another conquest, another high, another taste, and yet he is empty. His happiness lasts a moment and collapses. His life becomes a cycle of hunger without end. But the desexualized mind breaks the cycle. He discovers contentment not in acquisition, but in being. He realizes that what he was chasing was never outside him. The power he sought was already his, buried beneath layers of compulsion. This is what Jung described as the transcendent function, the psyche's ability to hold opposites until something higher emerges. Not repression, not indulgence, but transformation. A third way that integrates instinct and consciousness into a greater unity. In Jung's language of alchemy, this process has stages. The nigretto, the blackening, when a man confronts the shadow, faces his darkest drives, admits the truths he has hidden. Then the albedo, the whitening, the birth of new clarity, when he no longer identifies blindly with these forces. And finally, the rubedo, the reddening, when passion and instinct are reintegrated at a higher level, no longer destructive, but creative. The desexualized mind is born here, in the rubedo, not the death of desire, but its transformation into fuel for wholeness. What does this look like in daily life? It looks like work becoming service rather than self-medication. It looks like relationships rooted in authenticity rather than an unconscious need. It looks like presence that heals rather than drains. And people notice. Opportunities arise, synchronicities appear. Jung described this phenomenon that when the psyche finds coherence, the world responds with coherence. Reality itself begins to mirror the order within. The man who integrates himself becomes a magnet for meaning. This is not magic. It is the natural law of resonance. When your psyche is fractured, you attract chaos. When your psyche is whole, you attract order. And this is why the desexualized mind is modern man's greatest weapon. In a world engineered to keep you fragmented, to keep you reactive, to keep you a slave to lower impulses, the man who integrates becomes unstoppable. He cannot be bought as easily. He cannot be distracted as easily. He cannot be bent into predictable patterns. He is free. But freedom has a price. Jung warned that no one becomes conscious without pain. To look into your shadow, to admit your compulsions, to recognize your weakness, this takes moral courage. Most men avoid it. They would rather distract themselves than confront themselves. They would rather remain hungry than walk through the fire that transforms hunger into strength. Yet for those who dare, the reward is immeasurable. The self, Jung's term for the wholeness that lies beyond the ego, emerges as the new center of being. No longer do you live tossed about by instinct. No longer do you need constant validation. Instead, you live from inner authority, the quiet, unshakable certainty of a man who knows who he is. Jung wrote that the attainment of the self is the finding of God within, not as an external ruler, but as the living center of order in the psyche. The ego remains, but it revolves around this deeper center. And from this axis comes real confidence, real presence, real power. This is why the man with a desexualized mind feels different. He carries a gravity that others cannot explain. He stands like a mountain in a world of restless waves. He doesn't need to chase because he has become. And so I ask you, how much longer will you let your unconscious rule you? How much longer will you confuse reaction with choice? How much longer will you live divided when integration calls? The path is not easy, but it is the only one worth walking. It begins with awareness, noticing the desire without becoming it. Then comes the shadow work, facing the parts of yourself you fear. Then comes the strengthening of ego, not to inflate, but to hold steady against the tides of instinct. And then finally, the emergence of the self, the center that transforms chaos into coherence. Walk this path, and you will know what few men ever do, that freedom is not found in indulgence, nor in repression, but in mastery. That true attraction is not in chasing, but in being.